Hey, friend. Welcome to the Human Design Diaries, a soul aligned sisters podcast. Here we will delve into the fascinating world of human design. In this series, we'll cover the basics, dive deep into the gates and channels, and share plenty of laughs and magic. Join us as we explore how human design can guide you to live a more soul aligned life. Get ready for insightful conversations full of practical tips and insights to help you on your journey. Let's explore. Well, welcome back. Episode 3, the Human Design Diaries. Thank you all for the love and the sharing and the comments. We appreciate it. So we're episode 3. We're going to take a little bit of a rewind and talk to the audience about the basics of human design. We're going to talk about high level things to know about how the system started, where it came from, where it's going, maybe. And then, some of the things that Jill finds important to share with people, in the beginning of any session she does, to kind of cover, what are we talking about? What is human design, and how do we look at our chart and gain some knowledge from it? So yeah, that's the plan. Hi, Jill. I'm a little
Hi,
late to the
Becky.
party. Just so everybody knows, we're recording this towards the end of Mercury retrograde. And so, if anything gets, weird, that's probably why.
We'll blame it on that.
Right, right.
Convenient excuse.
Correct. All right. Well, I'll let you take it away, Jill.
Okay. Yeah, I felt like Becky, the it would be good for us to pause. Like we've done a couple of we did your deep dive session on your chart, and then we talked a little bit about career and some of those kinds of things. In the second meeting, Mercury retrograde. Like what's the word in our second episode, let me call it an episode. And so I thought this episode would be great for people who are just coming into awareness around human design, maybe don't have a good understanding of what it is or what the benefits are. This system has been around. It was first created in the 1980s by a man by the name of Ra Uru Hu, and it's actually channeled. He received the system from what he called the voice, and it occurred over the course of like 8 or 9 days that he channeled this information. And I don't really talk much about that. It is a very fascinating story, and Ra Uru Hu has since passed, but there's a video out there that we could share with the audience where he shares his experience of bringing the system into being, and it is very interesting and very fantastical, and not everybody is gonna be like, oh yeah, sign me up when they hear it, right? And so I think it's important to know that you don't have to believe all these mystical things. This system can be very mystical, and depending on how it's described and who you're working with, they may really treat it as a mystical tool. But for me, this is a bridge tool. This is a tool that in a system that allows people to explore themselves and learn more about themselves in a little bit of a different way than maybe what they're used to, but doesn't require them to believe in all the mystical things that are out there for people to kind of dabble in. So that's how I approach the tool. So, when I share it with people and I share oh, this was created by Ra Uru Hu, I don't go into this is channeled information, because that's not accessible for all people. Not all people
Yeah,
are at that place. You know what I mean? There's people who I
I
think
do.
I can bring them into human design and very softly and gently lead them to the over the bridge, like we talk about being a bridge for a lot of people, and not be scary. So,
Yeah,
really, I think at the end of the day, this is a self-awareness tool. That is how I describe it most. What would you think about that? Do you think that we should be talking about like the mystical underpinnings of it, or do you feel like it's more accessible, sort of just talking about what it has to offer?
Well, I think that it depends. It depends on the person. It depends on what your goals are.
Hmm.
I feel like there's all kinds of people out in this world, and we're all doing different things on different paths. I feel like this is a very accessible um, assessment tool.
Hmm.
And, if you want to use it for more spiritual purposes, you can do that. You go back to episode 2, and at the end we're talking a lot about intuition in the chart, and for me that shows like that it can have a very mystical related purpose, but it's also super practical. And so, what we find in our business and in our coaching programs is we use human design, for things like career, and how to like navigate relationships and how to show up not just for other people but for yourself. So I think it is what you make it. And if
Hmm.
the fact that it's a channeled system bothers you, then maybe it's not for you. But I don't think anybody who's experienced it can deny the power of it. So if you can look past how it was created, if it's for some reason bothers you that that's how it came into being, then look at the practice of it. Look at
Hmm.
the purpose in it, and open your brain a little bit. I
Hmm.
don't know. I think people are very their brains are very programmed,
Hmm.
especially here in the United States. And you know, it takes some deconditioning to begin to like accept and believe that we don't know everything, and sometimes there are things out there that have been around for thousands of years, like astrology, or I don't know, 50 years,
Right.
that can help us, as humans navigate this thing called life.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And I would say too that the phrase that comes to mind is something that a friend has said to me along the way, over different things, not this specifically, but it's suspend disbelief, right? It's okay that it's like, it seems a little weird to you, or maybe it's like a little out there if that's your perspective, right? If you're like coming to this from a very heavily like logic oriented way of thinking, then it might be a little hard to sort of like get over the hump of, okay, this is like, you need my birth information. I'm not answering questions about, about myself. Like, because most people who experience this, they are on a journey of self awareness and self discovery.
Yeah.
And they likely have, if they make their way to human design, they likely have taken personality assessment tools like DISC or Myers Briggs or Strength Finders, those kinds of tools. So they're already like primed for it. So I would say, like, if you're if you're looking for something a little bit different than what you can receive through answering a series of questions about what you already know about yourself, then human design is a great like next step. And so if it's a little weird for you, that you're not answering any questions and I'm pulling your chart based on your birth information, then I would say suspend disbelief and just like be open enough. And what I find is that I would say upwards of 95% of people that I share their human design chart with are like, wow, like how
Uh-huh.
is this so accurate? Because I don't know you, right? I
Right.
don't know your life. I don't know your experiences, and yet I'm able to, through interpreting your chart for you, understand some of the themes that are present in your life, your most natural way of being, those kinds of things. So, trust. Just like be open and trust it, and then see what it has to offer you, because that's the other way that I use, that I think is important, in terms of how I specifically use human design, is I think when people are coming into a system like this, not from like the spiritual side, like if they find it from the spiritual side, from their spiritual explorations, then I think they're more likely to be open-minded and accepting. If they're
Hmm.
coming to it as sort of the first step on maybe a spiritual awakening journey or a deeper self-discovery journey that they're on that is taking them into some different types of tools, then I think that, it's important to highlight that we're not seeking truth here. This is not an exercise in what is true or not true. This is an exercise in what is true for you. When I share my ideas about what your chart has to say based on my own research and me talking to other people about how they interpret the energies for themselves, how they've lived it, when I share those things, it is not to say this is your truth, this is what is true about you. It is a presentation of an idea, of a thought, of a interpretation that you are then supposed to consider and decide for yourself, what does it mean? Does it mean anything to you? Do you identify with it? Can you see how it has shown up in your life? Like, what are the real world examples of how this is operating for you, this pattern or this theme? And what does it want you to know? What
Hmm.
do you do with it? So, whenever we're teaching a class, we're always talking about at the beginning, you are the expert on you. I'm going to share what I know. Your job is to decide what's true for you and whether what I share is something that feels important and is worth your own consideration and discovery.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I think, I mean, I'm 47 this week, and I've been in
Happy birthday.
thank you. Um, Corporate life basically began for me at 18.
Mm-hmm.
I took a job right out of high school, 1995. And from there, like I got exposed to things like Myers-Briggs and Strengths Finder, and I'm exposed to all of those things through my jobs, right? um and I always like there was always something that like was interesting about it,
Mm-hmm.
or revealed some things about me, but I always felt like, am I answering these questions from a place of like what people expect me
Mm-hmm.
to say? Or am I answering these questions from a place of like authenticity? This is really who I am deep inside, even if I mask it. And I find that like I always found those types of tests to be like, yeah, that's a good representation of who I want everyone to think I am.
Mm-hmm.
But is it actually who I am or how I feel inside? And I think that like that's something that I think that like people tend to like either they think about it or they just like do these things because it's required at work and they just move on with their lives. But if you are somebody who's on like whether it's a spiritual journey or just a self-discovery journey, like I do not think I have found any system that has been more enlightening, to me, and how I am designed and the way that I move in the world and the way that I show up in relationships. So um, you know if you have a hard time like dealing with where the system came from, perhaps don't focus on that part.
Yeah,
And
just
just,
forget about it.
yeah.
Just
And
ignore it.
if you can't open your mind, then that means it's not for you right now.
That's right. That's right. Yep.
You can still like subscribe and follow us, and maybe at some point when something
Right.
else shakes you awake, you can be like, there were those two sisters who were seemed like they were woo woo, but not that woo woo, maybe like a
Mm-hmm.
bridge. Oh,
Mm.
wait. The human design bridge that Jill built.
Yes. Yes, that's right. I love that. Yeah, I mean, I remember taking a personality assessment test for one of the places that we worked at together, and it was part of the interview process. And I remember receiving my results and it saying something to the effect of like either I wasn't answering truthfully or I was answering in a way that wasn't really who I really am, right? And I and so then I had to take it again later. The founder of the company was like, "Hey, can you take this again now? It's like 6 months later. I want to see what your results are now." I'm like, "Okay, sure, whatever." Um, but the other thing I hate about personality tests, and this is a this will probably resonate for the generator types who need yes or no questions. The sort of yes, the like answer on a scale of 1 to 5. Like answer
I
like
hate
least
those.
likely. I'm like, I don't, if everything is a 4, I
Neutral.
don't know.
I'm neutral. I'm a
Right.
3 on everything.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So this system, human design, takes all of that out.
Right.
Literally, you only need to know your birth information, your date of birth, your time of birth, exact if possible, and your location of birth, city, state, country. Not everybody has access to that information, and that is a barrier that the system has in place because it is based primarily in astrology. So we do need to know at the moment of your birth where were the planets, and that is like the sort of basis of what the design ends up being, like your unique design, human design ends up being. So if you're somebody who does not have access to your birth information, maybe you were adopted, maybe your parents don't know, they don't remember, whatever, there's lots of reasons why. Like I've heard people say, I was like the last of 9 kids. My mom has no idea what time I was born during the day. That's okay. Like we can work with that. But I would say if you're not sure at all about when you were born, where you were born, even the date that you were born, then there are, if you feel really called to this type of information, then you can get a what I believe they call a rectification through astrology, where they will speak to you about some of the big events in your life, and then they can discern what your birth time and date were based on astrology. So that is an option for people. But if simply you just don't know like the time of birth, we can pull a chart that gives us ranges. And often what I see is that it's not always true, but for the most part, there will be consistency across the day. But because it is based on where the planets are, at any given moment, things can change. So, don't let that stop you. If you're like, I don't have my time and I don't have it's not on my birth certificate, or I don't have my birth certificate, don't let that stop you from exploring it, because we can probably get some good information that you may not be able to go deep, deep, deep into your chart, but you can get the surface level stuff, which is really where the meat is. You don't have to go deep in the system. That's the beautiful thing about it. It's incredibly complex and nuanced, but you can really scratch the surface and get a lot out of it that will support you in finding more about who you are, more about the best way for you to use your energy in the world, and more about your purpose, even. That is available right at the surface of the system.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I think, people should know like we're willing to work with you on that. So
Yeah, totally.
just contact us. So why don't we talk about like what are some of the high level things that people should know about the system, and sort of like how to like dip your toe in the human design. Like don't overwhelm yourself. I know some people like to
Are
like
you
go
waving
down,
like me?
yeah,
I do.
me, go down the rabbit hole on things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I think this system is more of a like small bites, digestion, integration, whatever you want to call it. But what do you think?
I totally agree with that. I often tell people, I can tell sort of who, based on their design, are going to be the ones who really want to dig in and learn all the information. Typically, if you have a line 1 in your profile, if there's a number 1 in your profile, you're going to be somebody who wants to like get the research. You're going to want to like go down the rabbit holes and that kind of thing. So, what I typically tell people is Life has a way of bringing you the themes that you need to know about when you need to know about them. You don't have to force your learning process. You don't have to force your investigation. You don't even have to force your understanding of yourself. When it comes to any particular theme, life will bring these things to you, and if you're paying attention close enough and noticing enough, then you'll be able to see them, and then you can dig in there. So, and I also tell people, follow the breadcrumbs. If there are pieces of information that you see that really interest you about the system, follow those, right? Don't feel overwhelmed by everything that the system has to offer you. Instead, focus on what you're interested in. Like, what's really sticking out to you? What are you thinking about, several days later? That's an indicator of like, oh, there might be something there for you. So that's sort of how I tell people to approach it. But, to your sort of like prompting, let's talk about um, a little bit more about what the system is and then what are some of the basics. So, this system is a combination or a synthesis of four ancient modalities, or, systems of knowledge, or, however you want to phrase it. I've already mentioned one, which is astrology. So, the system is really set up to generate a what's known as like a body graph for your particular human design chart based on where the planets were at the exact moment of your birth, and then based on that 88 astrological degrees before you were born, or about 3 months before you were born. So it gives us indicators of where the planets were. The planets in human design are moving through the 64 gates, like over the course of the year. The 64 gates in human design, which are all the numbers that you see in your chart, um, those are connected to the Chinese I Ching, the 64 hexagrams in the Chinese I Ching, which is the oldest divination book, in the world. What I will say about that is the interpretations of the gates, while they are based kind of loosely on the I Ching, each of the hexagrams in the I Ching, it's not a one-to-one match. So sometimes you can read the I Ching for, like, let's say gate 64, right? You can read the 64th hexagram in the I Ching and get an interpretation for that. And you'll see that when you look at the human design interpretation of that energy, then maybe it's a little bit different. So it can be similar or it can be kind of very different. So it isn't a one-to-one match, but that's generally what it is based on. So you have the planets, you have the gates. The channels are in the human design system. It's what sort of looks like the electrical wiring that's on the body graph. So let me just share my screen real quick and I can show you what I'm talking about. It's easier to show it. So if we're looking here, then you can see what I'm talking about. Like, this is the body graph, and you can see these lines that go in between the squares and diamonds and triangles. Kind of looks like wiring. And that's sort of what it is. Like, these are the energy pathways in the design. And when there is, one gate that's defined or colored in, this gate 32, for an example, right here, this is colored in, and then on the other side of it, between, on this other end where the square is the root center, 54 is also colored in. So when both of these are colored in or defined, then that creates a channel. And there are 36 total channels in the human design chart, and this is loosely connected to the Judaic Kabbalah. So let me stop my share there. This is another thing that is like, it's not exactly connected, right? So when you look at the body graph and the way like the things are the energy centers are connected and the lines that go in between and the channels, etc., then it kind of, if you also like put it next to a tree of life, like the Kabbalah tree of life, then you can kind of see, oh, this looks similar. Like this this is a similar sort of thing, but there isn't an interpretation similarity necessarily. So it's not like the channel means a certain thing and you can find that corresponding channel in the tree of life. That's not really what it is. It's more so the idea that the energy is moving between energy centers, like the tree of life is connected. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And I think it's helpful to know, like, sort of these other ancient, modalities or belief systems are
Hmm.
incorporated, but you can't just look at that. You have
Right.
it's a larger
It's a
picture of,
separate thing.
yeah, yeah,
Hmm.
and sort of how these things play together as
Right.
well.
Yeah. So the last modality or knowledge system or belief system that is incorporated into human design is the Hindu chakra system. And that's where you have the energy centers themselves. So the difference between the human design centers is there's nine. And in the Hindu chakra system, there's seven main ones, right? Like the seven main ones that most of us know about. There are others, but the in the case of the heart center in the Hindu chakra system, that is reflected in the identity center and the will center in the human design chart. So the heart center was split into two. The solar plexus chakra was also split into two in the human design system. So the solar plexus chakra exists in the Hindu chakra system, and in human design, that corresponds to the spleen center and the emotional solar plexus. So there's been a change that happened that moved, and this happened in the 1700s. The chart changed, and so it shifted us into nine centered beings, and we've been living, kind of playing that out since that time. The chart is going to be changing again in 2027. That is a whole separate conversation that I am not prepared to have. But just know that like there's going to be some shifts in the body graph in 2027, which highlights the time in which collectively we're moving into a new global cycle. So that's sort of like how all of the pieces come together within the body graph itself. So where all the planets were at the time that you were born and 3 months before you were born, and how everything connects together and how the energy moves and which energy centers are colored in or defined and which channels or gates are colored in or defined, all stems from where the planets were. And that interpretation of how the energy is moving through the body graph tells us things like type, strategy and authority, profile, incarnation cross, and then there's other things that are available too. So let me pause there. Where should we go next, Becky? Tell me what more should we talk about?
So I guess, that was a really good explanation of where the chart came from and sort of how to approach it. Why don't you tell us, like, when you're first explaining someone's chart, what do you start with? What are the small things that you start with, or how do you suggest people go about exploring their own chart, after they've, of course, booked a reading with you?
Oh, so let me stop my share. Yes. I love that. Thank you. Nice plug. um, what I tell people is when you get your human design chart, the place you should start is type, strategy, and authority. Those are the things that make the whole thing run, if you will. If you are going to explore anything, that's where you should start. Like, it is very easy to get kind of lost in all of the numbers and the colors and the different like things that are happening in your chart. It can be really overwhelming. So really, like, the main fundamental thing that human design, the interpretation that human design gives us, is type. And type is broken down into five categories. You will be one of five. And that tells you what is your most natural way of being in the world. How does your energy most naturally flow? What are some of the like traits or patterns of behavior that are most natural for you? And when you start to understand that, you can It might give you a little sense of relief. It might tell you, oh, I'm like doing this a little bit like differently than I should be. Like maybe that's why things feel hard or I feel burned out. Type can really give you a lot of information about like what is your most natural way of being. And this is sort of what personality tests attempt to give you, right? They attempt to tell you, they bucket you in a certain group. And in type is the same way. So that's the first place to start. Along with type comes something called strategy. Strategy is connected to type. So each human design type has their own strategy, although generator types, manifesting generators or generators have the same strategy essentially, which because they're both generator types. So strategy tells you how to engage your energy in the world. How do you know where to spend your time? How do you know what ideas to pursue? How do you know what opportunities to pursue? How do you know how to create opportunities for yourself or in the world? So, strategy gives you information about how to best use your energy in a way that is going to be sustainable. And just for the record, it is not make it happen. Everybody has to make it happen. That is we have that perception, and it is completely burning everybody out, right? That you have to push, 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 push. That is not what human design says is the best way to use your energy. So strategy tells you how to engage. Authority goes hand in hand with strategy, but it's different. Authority tells you, how do you know in your body whether this opportunity or this idea or this relationship or this thing I want to do is right for me? How do I know now's the right time? How do I make the decision? How do I discern what is a yes and what is a no? And for I guess this kind of the spoiler alert for authority is that it is not a logical pro con list in your head. It is not I'm going to think my way into what is best for me here. It is a body assessment. And in this way, human design offers us a really powerful way to learn to tune into our body and to use our body's intelligence. So like from like here down, like below the neck, like the sense that we have in our body, our emotional feelings, our gut feelings, the pings that we get, wherever they might be, our bodies, yes or no, to help us know when is timing right. Is this the right thing? And it doesn't always match what your brain says is the right thing to do. So you can make your pro con list and say, well, clearly, like, this is the path I should take. And when you tune into your body is like, I'm going to be sick. Like, this is horrible. Like, I'm nauseous. I'm having all these negative sensations in my body. That's like a no, right? And so there can be this, like, there's a difference. But what human design tells us is like your body also has intelligence that we have been trained to ignore that you can tune into. And if you learn to trust it, then you'll find that it is correct for you. And it doesn't mean that it's all going to turn out great. It just means that it's another way for you to figure out how to sustainably engage your energy in the world and to find the opportunities that are going to present you with growth and more experience and possibly good experiences, or it it is another way to make decisions that we would say is the a better way than your brain assessment. So those are the three things. That's like the major place to start if you're exploring like those three things.
And do you think it's important to, explore just your own type, strategy and authority, or do you think that there's value in knowing sort of like the overarching for each different type,
Yeah,
as you navigate, you know, trying to implement using the system?
I firmly believe that having at least some knowledge of how the other types operate is really important to develop a compassionate perspective, because it's great to know about yourself. And I think that when you read about your type, for the most part, like most people are going to say, "Oh yeah, that's totally me. Like I am that way. Like that is how I sense myself. That is the way that I operate." But we have this tendency to think that everybody operates the way we operate. And that is just not true. And that's especially true for type, where we have two types, generators and manifesting generators, that have sustainable workforce and life force energy, who are 70% of the population, who can help us move forward, who are really designed to do the work of building in the world, who are the ones who can kind of continue to show up and make things happen. Because we're 70% of the population, we have sort of developed this idea that like everybody can do that. Like, and if you can't keep up, then that's a you problem. But the truth is, the other 30% of the population, which are reflectors, are 1%, manifestors are 9%, and projectors are 20%, do not have a defined sacral center. They are not designed to do the work of building. It doesn't mean that they can't work. Of course they can, like anybody else, and they borrow the energy from other people. What it means is that they cannot sustain that for the long term. They need more rest and more breaks. They need more downtime. They need to engage their energy in the right way in the world so that they can be sustainable. And that is not doing all the task-based work and like making it happen and showing up and trying to keep up. So I think the benefit to knowing about the other types is to see that like not everybody operates like you. And it helps us, I think, especially the 70% of us who are really like driving forward progress, through our like work energy, that like we have to be generous when we see that somebody isn't keeping up. And how can we create space for them to be there, to be sustainable, to be their like best version of themselves, to contribute in the way that only they can contribute, but not hold them to the same standard of like hours and like, level of commitment and all that kind of stuff that we would hold ourselves to. So I really feel that knowing yourself is important, but also being aware that like not everybody is operating in the same way can help us have compassion for each other and to create space for different ways of being within our communities, within our organizations, etc.
Yeah, I think it can really help um, in all of your type different relationships. Personal, professional, uh, how you observe the world generally.
Mm-hmm.
I think it definitely opened up a door for like way more compassion for others.
Yeah, and I think the other thing about it is like some of those areas that are annoying or rub you the wrong way, like the things that people do and you feel that are inconsiderate or they're not thinking of you or what have you, like you create this story in your mind of what's going on. When you have an understanding of like, oh, well, maybe they're overwhelmed, like maybe it's too much, right? Maybe they're like hiding out because their energy level is low, or maybe they're a manifestor who forgot to tell you that they have switched directions, and they're not responding either, or they're not telling you the thing that they need to be telling you before they do it. And instead you can say like, well, this still annoys me. Like, you still got to do, like, I need you to tell me before you do something. Or if you're going to disappear, I need to know that because I care and it makes me feel a certain kind of way. But you can do it in a way that is not like you're a bad person. You can do it in a way that's like, I understand that this is part of who you are. And I need something a little bit different from you. Like, can you try a little bit harder to let me know when you're going to like ghost me?
Yeah.
Right? Before you do.
Oh yeah.
So I
Yeah.
don't feel weird about what maybe you're mad at me or whatever. Like, well, maybe none of that is true. So it gives us this place where we can not only see somebody differently and like take kind of maybe sometimes take the sting out of and take the story that we make up out of the behavior that we're witnessing. But it also gives us a way to compassionately say, like, hey, I need you to be a little bit more accountable on this thing with me in this relationship. And I'm not saying that you're wrong or you're bad or whatever. What I'm saying is, like, I need something a little bit different too. So, like, meet me halfway here.
Um, any other parting like thoughts or things that you want to share that
Yeah.
people should be thinking about?
Yeah, I think there's two things I want to share before we wrap. One is a lot of people come into human design wanting to understand their purpose. They feel that they're supposed to be doing something, or they want to be in something that feels purposeful for them, but they don't necessarily know what that is. Human design does offer you information about purpose, but it's not what maybe you think it is. Human design is not going to tell you who you're going to be, what kind of job to have. Like, it's not going to tell you who you should be in a relationship with. It's not going to tell you any of those things. What it does offer you is that who you are is your purpose. Being the fullest expression of yourself is your purpose here. And you can do that in a myriad of ways. You can be anyone you want to be. Um, you can work any job you want to work, right? You can really create your life the way that you want it to. What human design offers us is the patterns and themes that we're going through, the energetic themes that we have set up for ourselves to experience. And those things are going to find you no matter where you are. So, like, even something like an incarnation cross, which offers an overarching life theme, if you want to say it's kind of like purpose, that's probably the closest thing to what people consider to be purpose would be incarnation cross. But that's even operating without you knowing it in big ways and small ways in your life. So, purpose is available to you, but it's not going to tell you what to do with your life. You might get ideas when you hear about some of the themes around your purpose. You might get ideas about how that could play out in a way that feels really good to you. You know, what job that might look like, or career path, or, life path that you want to take. But there's no limit here. There's no limit to what you can do. And your purpose is really to be the fullest expression of yourself as you can. So that's one. The second thing I would offer is that, you know, the way I share human design, we're going to talk about type and strategy, authority, profile. We might talk a little bit about definition, split definition, single definition, those kinds of things. We'll talk about emotional themes and incarnation cross, but we're not going to talk about things like variables, environments, what kind of food to eat. These are things that are available maybe through other human design practitioners. They are available in maybe in charts that you get. You might see that, like, what's your preferred environment. And that's just not something I study. It's not something that I have learned. It doesn't mean it's not valid. If you feel that there's something about that is interesting to you and you want to know about, I say explore it, or find a practitioner who studies it, who can share those things with you. And I would say that you can get a lot out of the basics of human design. There is a ton here for you, and you don't have to go into those really deep places in order to get information about the patterns and themes playing out for you and how you can shift them or accept them, or what that looks like for you, depending on you and what you want. So there are other things that are out there. Some of those things did not come with the original system, but were added on at a later point. And so depending on who you're working with, they may or may not talk about those things, but they're there nonetheless. And so if it's really pulling and calling to you, I say explore it. I think that's pretty much it. The last thing I'll just say is that if you want to explore your design and it feels overwhelming to you once you receive your free chart, whether it's from us or from somebody else, we have lots of ways to work with us. I do mini sessions through the Reiki Center here in Columbus, but they're all virtual, so I can take clients from anywhere. We have reports, a digital report. We have digital readings. So there are really accessible and low cost ways to start your exploration into this. If you're like, I'm a little bit interested, but I don't want to like take the big bite. The other thing is if you do want to work one on one, I have two available offerings for human design readings. One is 30 minutes, it's $75, and the other one is 75 minutes for 149. So there's a lot of options that you can dip your toe in, and we'd be happy to work with you to kind of get you jump started on your exploration of the system. Shameless plug.
Well, yeah. And don't forget our blog and our
Oh
human
yeah.
design library on there. So, yeah, we got tons of options out there, coaching programs as well. So, if you're interested, and this seems like we seem like people you might want to vibe with, and you need some encouragement and you want to change your life or start following your, actual desires, we're here to help support that. So yeah,
Yeah.
well, this was a good conversation. I'm excited to continue putting out more episodes, more free resources for people out there. So yeah, thanks, Jill. This was really informative.
Thank you, Becky. Thanks for guiding us through the conversation today.
Absolutely. Until next time, guys. Thanks again for joining us on this episode of Human Design Diaries. We hope that you love this episode as much as we did. Please take whatever resonates with you and leave the rest. If you're ready to dive deeper, visit our website at soulalignedsisters.com, where you'll find a wealth of free resources to support your journey. In our store, you can request a free human design chart, purchase low-cost reports, or even book a personalized reading with Jill. Be sure to explore our blog's Human Design Library, filled with stories and insights to help you get aligned. And don't miss our free Introduction to Human Design workshop, available through the Soul Aligned Sisters online school. Whether you're just starting out or deepening your knowledge, there's something there for everyone. Stay tuned for more episodes as we continue to uncover the magic of human design. Until next time, stay aligned and keep living your most magical life.